Mom announced she's pregnant for the 7th time, but I'm done raising her minions. So I moved out, but she called the cops on me and this happened. Subreddit. So, this ain't just a 7 kids situation. We're talking full-blown 7 Deadly Sins Home Edition. Greed? Check. Wrath? Oh boy, double check. It's long and messy. And if I hadn't lived it, I'd call BS too. Here's how it all went down. I'm 18 male. Start from the beginning. Picture this. Parents who were basically kids themselves when they had me. Mom was 19, Dad was 20. Real Einstein-level family planning right there. We crashed at my maternal grandparents' place since teenagers working minimum wage can't afford their own place. Those early years living with my grandparents were legitimately the best time of my childhood. My grandpa, let's call him Gramps, was this old-school mechanic who taught me everything from changing oil to rewiring outlets. Dude could fix anything with duct tape and determination. The man had a workshop in the garage that was basically my childhood paradise. Organized tools, actual workbenches, and projects that made sense. My grandma, Nana, was basically Martha Stewart but with actual warmth, homemade everything, spotless house, and she never once made me feel like a burden. Her kitchen always smelled like something amazing was happening, and there was always a fresh batch of cookies cooling on the counter. But here's what really made those years special. My grandparents treated me like I mattered. When I had a bad day at school, Nana would make hot chocolate and actually listen to what happened. When I was excited about something I learned, Gramps would put down whatever he was doing and give me his full attention. They showed up to every school event, remembered what I was interested in, and made me feel like being their grandson was something they were proud of. Meanwhile, my parents treated the place like a free hotel with room service. They'd roll in at 2 a.m. from whatever party they'd been at, sleep until noon, then complain about being stressed from adult responsibilities. My dad would sprawl on the couch playing video games while Gramps was trying to teach him how to change a tire or fix a leaky faucet. That's what AAA is for, my dad would say, never looking up from his controller. What happens when you can't afford AAA? Gramps would ask. I'll figure it out when I get there. That was my dad's approach to everything. Figure it out later, let someone else handle it, avoid responsibility until it became unavoidable. My mom wasn't much better. She dumped me on Nana whenever her friends wanted to hang out, never asking if it was convenient. Can you watch him for a few hours? Sarah's having a crisis and needs someone to talk to. Translation: I want to gossip and drink, so here's my kid. When you're 5 years old, eating fresh cookies and learning cool stuff from Gramps, you don't really analyze your parents' character flaws. I just knew that life with my grandparents felt safe and predictable in a way that following my parents around never did. They came the move that started my personal Vietnam. When I hit first grade, my parents announced they were ready for independence. They'd found this rundown rental house across town and were moving us out. The big reason for this sudden burst of maturity. Mom was pregnant again. I was actually excited. Finally going to have a little brother or sister, and we'd have our own place. Man, if I could go back and slap some sense into my 6-year-old self, I would. The house was basically a downgrade in every possible way. No more Gramps' workshop where I learned to use tools. No more Nana's cooking, just whatever frozen crap my parents could microwave. The place was this cramped 2-bedroom rental with thin walls, creaky floors, and a kitchen that barely fit 2 people. My parents acted like they'd upgraded to a mansion. Look, we have our own place, my mom would say. The yard was mostly dirt with a few patches of dead grass. And the neighbors were the kind of people who had screaming matches at 3 a.m. When my brother was born, I'm going to name him Screamer because that kid had lungs like a firetruck siren. My parents started looking at me like I was their personal assistant. The progression was gradual but relentless. It started with little requests. Hey buddy, can you grab me a diaper while I finish this show? Keep your brother quiet. We're trying to have a conversation. I was 7 years old. 7. But apparently that qualified me for childcare duties in their minds. Within a few months, these little helps became expectations. I was expected to entertain Screamer while my parents watched TV, to help with feeding time, to change diapers when they were busy doing absolutely nothing productive. The worst part was their attitude when I'd complain. If I said I wanted to play outside instead of holding the baby, my mom would hit me with, "This is what families do. Don't be selfish." Like wanting to be a kid was some character flaw. My dad's contribution to this mess was even worse. He'd come home from his part-time job at some warehouse, collapse on the couch, and declare himself too exhausted to deal with baby stuff. "I worked all day. I need to decompress," he'd say, reaching for the TV remote while Screamer was having a meltdown. When they started going out on date nights and leaving me alone with Screamer, I knew I was screwed. Picture 8-year-old me microwaving SpaghettiOs and trying to get a toddler to bed while my parents were out reconnecting as a couple. They'd leave me with a list of instructions like I was some hired babysitter. Except I wasn't getting paid and couldn't quit. Bedtime is 8 p.m. There's formula in the fridge. Call only if it's an emergency. Emergency? I was 8. Everything felt like an emergency when you're alone with a screaming baby and no idea what you're doing. If anything went wrong, somehow it was my fault for not being responsible enough. Screamer wouldn't stop crying. I should have tried harder to calm him down. He spit up on his clean clothes. I should have been more careful during feeding time. The house was messy when they got back. I should have cleaned up while watching a toddler. Yep, it was that bad. But wait, it got worse when they decided to make more minions. Over the next 11 years, my parents decided to populate their own personal daycare center. 5 more kids joined our household, each one adding to the insanity. Let me introduce you to the cast of characters that turned my life into a survival horror game. Screamer, the first edition, still lived up to his name at 10 years old. This kid could hit decibel levels that probably violated noise ordinances. He'd discovered that screaming got him attention fast, so that became his default communication method. Didn't want to wear shoes. Scream. Didn't like what was for dinner? Scream. Couldn't find his favorite toy? Nuclear level screaming. The Destroyer Kid number 3 earned his nickname by breaking everything he touched. The gaming headset I bought his masterpiece. Kid had hands like a demolition crew, and the impulse control of a sugar-high toddler. I once watched him break an indestructible toy truck within 5 minutes of opening the package. Spitter Kid number 4. This little princess. Think of the game Plants vs. Zombies. She was the plant. Her favorite thing to do is spitting on everything. Meals became Russian roulette. You never knew which plate had been contaminated. She'd take a bite of her sandwich, spit it back out onto the bread, and then offer it to someone else like she was being generous. My parents thought this was just a phase that she'd grow out of. She never did. Tornado Kid Knocker 5 could turn a clean room into a disaster zone in under 5 minutes. I swear this kid defied the laws of physics with how fast he could create chaos. You could literally watch him enter a room and count down from 10 before everything was destroyed. Velcro Kid number 6, the clingy one who couldn't function unless attached to someone. Guess who that someone usually was? Spoiler alert, not our parents. This kid would follow me around the house like a lost puppy, crying if I went to the bathroom alone, having meltdowns if I tried to go anywhere without him. Hurricane, the baby, fresh out of the oven, and already living up to the family tradition of making everyone else's life harder. 6 disasters. Each new addition meant more responsibilities dumped on me. My parents' logic. You're so good with kids. Translation: we're too lazy to parent, so that's your job. Now, here's a perfect example of the dysfunction. Family dinner with frozen pizza because cooking is apparently rocket science. The scene would play out the same way every time. My parents would heat up however many pizzas they thought we needed, dump them on plates, and call it dinner. If Spitter didn't like the pepperoni, it went straight on the floor. Not picked off onto her plate, not offered to someone else. On the floor. When I pointed out that this was disgusting and unsanitary, my dad said, "Kids will be kids. At least she's eating the rest." No consequences, no teaching moments, just acceptance that we were apparently living in a barn and they expected me to clean it up. Can you grab that pepperoni before someone steps on it? Public outings were my personal hell. Picture me chasing Tornado through Target while Screamer had a meltdown because we wouldn't buy him a toy. Destroyer knocked over a display of carefully stacked soup cans. Spitter was licking the shopping cart handle and Velcro was clinging to my leg, making it impossible to walk properly. Meanwhile, my parents stood there like tourists watching street performers, occasionally yelling, "Stop that!" without actually doing anything to stop anything. Other shoppers would stare at us like we were some kind of wildlife documentary. Meanwhile, I just wanted to disappear or wear a shirt that said, "Not my kids, not my choice," to avoid the judgmental looks. "Maybe you should control your kids," one lady suggested to my mom during a particularly spectacular meltdown in the cereal aisle. My mom's response: "They're just being kids." Some people are so judgmental. Lady, your offspring just destroyed an end cap display and are now using Cheerio boxes as soccer balls. That's not being kids. That's being feral animals who happen to walk upright. The car rides to and from these disasters were almost worse than the public scenes. 7 people crammed into a minivan that smelled like dead rats and diapers, with me trying to keep everyone from killing each other while my parents argued about directions or money or whose turn it was to deal with the next crisis. Are we there yet? Became the soundtrack of my adolescence, along with He's touching me and I have to pee, and the wonderful chorus of baby crying that never seemed to stop. As I got older, my parents' expectations evolved from help out occasionally to you are now our unpaid employee. Every weekend, every school break, every moment I wasn't physically in class was automatically claimed for babysitting duty. They never asked. They just announced, "We're going to dinner Saturday. You'll watch the kids." Made plans with friends. Too bad. School event not important. Normal teenage activities. Selfish waste of time. Friday nights became a particular source of frustration. While other kids my age were hanging out, going to movies, or just being normal teenagers, I was home changing diapers and trying to get 5 kids to bed at reasonable hours. The breaking point came when I was 15. My friend Jake was having this party, just kids from school, hanging out, playing games, normal stuff. I'd been looking forward to it for weeks because I never got to do normal teenager things. My parents said I could go. I was actually shocked. For once, they seemed to understand that I needed some kind of social life. I spent the whole week excited about finally getting to hang out with people my own age without having to worry about diaper changes or meltdowns. Then 2 hours before the party, they dropped the bomb. Change of plans. We decided to catch the late movie. You need to watch everyone. The casual way they said it made my blood boil. Like my plans were just some minor inconvenience that could be dismissed without thought. But you said I could go to Jake's. Plans change. Family comes first. I lost it. I never get to do anything. I'm 15. Not their dad. My dad's face went dark. We provide you with food and shelter. The least you can do is help out when we need it. Stop being ungrateful. Ungrateful for wanting one night to be a normal teenager. That's when my cousin Paul came into the picture. Paul was my mom's nephew, about 25, and the complete opposite of our family's dysfunction. He'd been watching this whole situation unfold over the years during family gatherings. And that night, he happened to show up just as my parents were getting ready to leave for their movie. "Where is he going dressed up?" Paul asked, seeing me in my good clothes. "Oh, he was supposed to go to some party, but we need him here," my mom said casually. Like canceling my plans was as normal as changing the TV channel. Paul looked between me and the little demons, who were already starting their evening routine of destruction. When's the last time this kid got to hang out with friends? He hangs out with his siblings all the time. That's not the same thing. Paul turned to me. "Go to your party. I'll watch them." My mom started protesting, but Paul shut it down with the kind of calm authority I wished I had. "He's 15. He should be hanging out with kids his age, not raising yours." Boom. First person in my family to actually acknowledge what was happening. My parents tried to argue, but Paul wasn't budging. "I'm not a teenager. You can guilt trip. Either I watch them or you stay home. Your choice." That night at Jake's party was the first time in years I felt like a normal kid. We played video games, ate pizza that nobody spit on, and I didn't have to worry about anyone's bedtime but my own. From that point on, Paul became like the big brother I never had. He'd check in on me regularly, take me out to get away from the house when things got too intense, and wasn't afraid to call my parents out on their crap when he witnessed it firsthand. "You know this isn't normal, right?" he asked me during one of our escape missions to get ice cream. "It's just how our family works," I said, repeating the line my parents had drilled into me. "No, it's how your parents avoid their responsibilities. There's a difference, kid." Having someone finally validate what I'd been feeling for years was like getting permission to be angry about my situation. Junior year brought the ultimate slap in the face. When Hurricane was born, my parents made a decision that still makes my blood pressure spike. Instead of putting the crib in their room like normal humans, they stuck it in mine. Their justification: "You're so good with babies, and we really need our sleep for work." They made this baby, but I was the one who needed to sacrifice sleep to take care of her because they had jobs. Like I didn't have school, homework, and a future to worry about. So at 16, I became a single dad to my infant sister. 2 a.m. feedings, diaper changes, dealing with colic, walking the floor for hours trying to get her back to sleep, all while trying to maintain decent grades and not look like an extra from The Walking Dead at school. The setup in my room was basically a nursery that happened to have my bed in it. Crib against one wall, changing table where my desk used to be, bottles and baby supplies covering every surface. My computer got moved to a corner where I could barely use it and forget about having any privacy. My parents' bedroom was right down the hall, but they acted like it was in another time zone. We didn't hear her crying, they'd say the next morning while I stumbled around like a zombie trying to get ready for school. The whole neighborhood could hear Hurricane crying. They just chose to ignore it because they knew I'd handle it. The sleep deprivation was brutal. My grades started tanking. How could they not? My friends stopped inviting me places because I was always exhausted or unavailable. My social life didn't just die. It was murdered with malice aforethought. The academic consequences were devastating. I went from being a solid B+ student to barely maintaining a C average. Teachers started asking if everything was okay at home. But what was I supposed to say? My parents turned me into a single teenage dad. That seemed too crazy to be believable. When my guidance counselor, Mrs. Patterson, called home about my dropping GPA, the conversation was unbelievable. We're concerned about his academic performance. His grades have dropped significantly this semester. Is everything okay at home? My mom, without missing a beat, oh, he's just going through a rebellious phase. You know how teenagers can be. Not applying himself like he should. Mrs. Patterson, clearly confused. His teachers say he falls asleep in class frequently. Are you sure there isn't something affecting his sleep schedule? He stays up too late playing video games, probably. Kids these days don't know how to manage their time. Video games, right? Because I had so much free time. Mrs. Patterson suggested maybe I needed more support or fewer responsibilities at home to help me focus on my studies. My mom actually laughed. Kids these days have it too easy. A little responsibility never hurt anyone. Builds character. The conversation ended with my mom promising to talk to me about time management and study habits, which translated to a lecture about how I needed to try harder and stop making excuses. The final academic kick in the teeth came that spring. I'd been accepted to this competitive engineering summer program at the state university. 3 weeks of intensive coursework that could have seriously boosted my college applications. The program was selective, looked incredible on resumes, and I was genuinely excited about it for the first time in months. My parents' response when I told them about the acceptance: "Who's going to watch the kids while we work? It's only 3 weeks, and Paul said he'd help out on weekends. We're not imposing on Paul every time you want to do something." They flat out refused to let me go. No discussion, no compromise, no consideration for what this opportunity could mean for my college prospects. I watched that acceptance letter turn into just another reminder of what I was missing out on because my parents couldn't be bothered to raise their own kids. There will be other opportunities, my dad said, like prestigious summer programs grew on trees. When? I asked. When will there be time for other opportunities? He didn't have an answer for that. The worst part was watching other kids from my school post about their summer programs on social media. Kids who weren't any smarter than me, didn't have better grades, but had parents who prioritized their education over their own convenience. They got to spend their summer learning and building resumes, while I spent mine changing diapers and breaking up fights between Spitter and Tornado. Around this time, my mom's sister decided to weigh in on the situation. Aunt Karen, and yes, that's actually her name because she was basically my mom's enabler and #1 cheerleader. Karen had 2 kids of her own, but they were these perfectly behaved little angels who never caused problems. Of course, she also had a husband who actually helped with parenting and enough money to hire babysitters when needed. She'd come over for Sunday dinners and watch the chaos unfold like it was entertainment. While Tornado was destroying the living room and Spitter was contaminating the food supply, Karen would sit there with this smile. "You're so lucky to have such a helpful oldest," she'd tell my mom while I was literally chasing Velcro around the table, trying to get him to eat something that wasn't candy. My kids would never be this responsible. When Paul started calling out my parents' behavior during family gatherings, Karen appointed herself as the family defender. "Some people need to mind their own business," she said pointedly during one tense dinner. Paul had questioned why I was the one getting all the kids ready for bed while my parents watched TV. "Not everyone understands family values," she'd spit. Paul didn't back down. What family values? Making a teenager raise your kids. He's learning responsibility. It'll make him a better man. It'll make him resent his family. The tension in that room could have been cut with a knife. My parents sat there like this was normal family discussion, while I just wanted to disappear into the floor. Karen cornered me later in the kitchen while I was cleaning up the dinner disaster zone. You know how good you have it here, right? She said, blocking my path to the dishwasher. Some kids don't have families that care about them. I was 17 and tired of the gaslighting. Yeah, some kids also don't have to be parents to their siblings. Her face went cold. Gratitude goes a long way in this family. Your parents work hard to provide for all of you, and I work hard to raise their kids. What's your point? Your parents could have put you in foster care when things got difficult. Instead, they kept the family together. Like basic parental responsibility was some kind of favor they were doing me. That's when I realized Karen wasn't just enabling my parents. She genuinely thought this was normal. The family dynamics got even more twisted when Karen started bringing her perfect little angels over for playdates. Her kids would sit quietly with coloring books while mine were turning the house into a disaster zone. And she'd make these pointed comments about different parenting styles. Some families are more structured, she'd say, watching Destroyer attempt to flush a toy car down the toilet. But every family finds what works for them. What worked for my family, apparently, was war zone. Karen's visits became a source of dread for me. She'd always find ways to reinforce my parents' narrative that I was lucky to be so trusted with important responsibilities. She'd praise my reliability in front of my parents, which just encouraged them to pile on more duties. You've raised such a responsible young man, she'd say. Yeah, they'd raised me to be responsible for everyone except myself. Fast forward to last month, I'm 18 now, barely surviving senior year with a 2.08 GPA that should have been much higher when my parents decided to drop their atomic bomb during a family meeting. We have exciting news, my mom announced like she was revealing winning lottery numbers. I just knew what was coming. We're having another baby. Number 7. Lucky number 7. The room started spinning like I was in some twisted version of Inception. They weren't even telling me as their son. The way my dad phrased it made everything crystal clear. We're going to need extra help when the baby comes. Good thing you're 18 now, so you can take on more responsibility without any legal issues. They'd actually thought about the legal implications of their child labor operation. Screamer actually started cheering. Another baby. Can we name it? The Destroyer looked confused. Where are we going to put it? There's already no room. Spitter with her usual charm asked. Can I feed it? I promise I won't spit on it. Velcro immediately attached himself to my leg. Will you take care of this one too? And Hurricane, as if she understood the conversation, started crying right on UE. I looked at my parents and saw two people who had learned absolutely nothing from the first 6 disasters. My mom was glowing with excitement, like this was the best news she'd ever shared. My dad had this satisfied smirk like he'd just solved all their problems by making another minion. That's when something inside me just snapped. I was done, completely, utterly done. I excused myself, went to my room, which was still half nursery, and called Gramps. Grandpa, they made another mistake. I need help. Can I please come live with you? The silence lasted maybe 3 seconds before he exploded. Not at me. At the situation, those idiots are having another kid. Jesus Christ, what's wrong with them? I'd never heard Gramps swear before. That's when I knew he was as fed up with my parents as I was. Pack your essentials. We're coming to get you right now. While I was packing, my parents were already banging on the door demanding I come out. I ignored it. I grabbed some clothes, my phone and phone charger, and most importantly, my birth certificate and social security card. Gramps and Nana showed up within 30 minutes, and I was out of there waiting. I'd never seen my grandparents look so angry. Gramps looked like he wanted to shake my parents until their teeth rattled. The look on my parents' faces when they realized I was leaving. Pure shock. Not sad that their son was moving out. They were already panicking about who was going to handle their responsibilities. You can't just leave! My mom shouted like I was breaking some kind of contract. Watch me, I said, walking past her with my duffel bag. We're your parents, my dad added. Like that meant something coming from people who treated me like hired help for years. No, I said, stopping at the door. You're the people who gave birth to me. There's a difference. Gramps stepped up beside me. If you treated him like family instead of free labor, maybe he wouldn't be leaving. My dad puffed up like he was going to argue, but Nana shut him down with one look. We'll be in touch about his things, she said curtly, then guided me out the door. As we drove away, I could see my parents standing in the doorway with the kids' chaos erupting behind them, finally getting a taste of what their lives looked like without their unpaid babysitter. Within hours of my great escape, my phone turned into a notification nightmare. Angry texts, missed calls, voicemails ranging from furious to manipulative to downright pathetic. First came the anger. How dare you abandon your family like this? Get your ass home right now. You're being selfish and ungrateful. When that didn't work, they switched to guilt. Your siblings are asking where you are. Velcro hasn't stopped crying since you left. Then came the manipulation. We've always been there for you. Family sticks together through thick and thin. But the text that really showed their true colors came from my dad at 2 a.m. Do you have any idea how much babysitters cost? You can't just leave us hanging like this. There it was. Their real concern wasn't losing their son. It was losing their free childcare. The mask was completely off. My mom followed up with increasingly desperate messages about how they needed me and couldn't function without my help. Not because they missed me as their child, but because I was essential to their household operations. When guilt didn't work, they escalated to threats. You're not 18 until graduation. We can force you to come back. We're calling the police. You're making a huge mistake that will ruin your future. They actually followed through on the police threat twice. Both times, the responding officers took one look at the situation and basically told my parents to get a life. The first cop was clearly annoyed. After talking to me privately and confirming I was there willingly, he explained to my parents that I was old enough to choose where I lived. But he's still our minor child. My mom insisted. Ma'am, he's 18 and a high school senior. Unless you have evidence of kidnapping or coercion, there's nothing we can do. This is kidnapping. They're turning him against us. Officer Johnson looked tired. Did your son go willingly? Well, yes. Then it's not kidnapping. It's an adult making a decision about where to live. The second call, 2 days later, brought another officer who was significantly less patient. We've been through this already, he told my parents. Your son is old enough to decide where he wants to live. Maybe focus on the kids you still have at home instead of the one who's clearly capable of taking care of himself. My dad's face turned redder than a stop sign. This is harassment. They're interfering with our parental rights. Your parental rights over an 18-year-old are pretty limited, sir. I suggest you contact a lawyer if you think otherwise. The threats started next. They were going to sue my grandparents for interfering with parental rights and kidnapping me. Gramps, being the legend he is, called their bluff. Go ahead and get a lawyer. I'd love to hear you explain to a judge why you're suing to force your son into unpaid child care. It's not unpaid child care, it's family responsibility, right? And I'm sure a judge will be very interested in hearing about those family responsibilities. That shut them up real quick. Meanwhile, Paul was getting updates from Karen, who was apparently leading the family campaign to paint me as the villain. The family group text, which Paul shared with me, was a masterpiece of delusion. Karen, I can't believe he would abandon his family like this. After everything they've done for him, his poor mother is beside herself. 7 kids and no help. Paul, maybe if they treated him like a son, he wouldn't have left. Karen, he's being selfish and ungrateful. Family sticks together through thick and thin. Paul, family doesn't exploit their kids. Karen, you're filling his head with nonsense about being exploited. He had a roof over his head and food on the table. Paul, and what did he have to do to earn those basic necessities that every parent is legally required to provide? Karen didn't have an answer for that one. The best part was watching the family dynamic shift in real time. Other relatives who'd been silent started asking questions about the situation. My mom's cousin posted in the group chat. Wait, why was he doing so much child care? Aren't there 6 other kids and 2 parents? Suddenly, Karen was backpedaling. He wasn't doing that much. He just helped out like any good big brother. Paul, bless him, wasn't letting that slide. He had a baby sleeping in his room and was doing night feeds. That's not helping out. That's being a parent. The truth was coming out, and Karen didn't like how it made her sister look. Here's where things got really interesting. Turns out Gramps and Nana had been documenting more than I realized. Every concerning conversation, every time I'd shown up exhausted, every joke I'd made about being the third parent, they'd been keeping track. Gramps pulled out this notebook he'd been maintaining for months. Dates, times, observations about my behavior and stress levels. Dude was basically running his own investigation without telling anyone. The notebook was damning, entries like March 15th, he fell asleep during dinner. Says he was up all night with the baby again. April 2nd, missed his school's science fair because parents needed him to babysit. He'd been working on his project for months. June 10th, noticed he's lost weight. My grandparents had been preparing for this moment. When they called CPS, they had documentation going back months. Screenshots of texts where my parents demanded I cancel plans for babysitting duty. Pictures I'd send of the house, disaster zones as jokes that actually showed the chaos and neglect. The social worker assigned to the case was Mrs. Madison. When she showed up at my parents' house for the initial visit, she found exactly what you'd expect: chaos. My parents tried to play it off as just one of those days and kids being kids. But she wasn't buying it. "Where do the children usually play?" she asked, looking around the disaster zone that used to be a living room. "Oh, anywhere really. We believe in letting kids be creative." "I see. And who typically supervises their creativity?" My parents exchanged glances. "Well, usually our oldest helps out, but he's not available right now." "Not available? How?" "He's staying with his grandparents temporarily. Teenage rebellion phase. You know how it is." Mrs. Madison made a note in her file. "I'd like to speak with the children individually if that's okay." When she interviewed my siblings separately, the truth came out fast. Kids are terrible liars. "Who usually dealt with the baby at night?" "Me." "Who helped with homework?" "Me." "Who got them ready for school when mom and dad were too tired?" "Take a wild guess." "Who made sure they brushed their teeth, had clean clothes, and ate something resembling breakfast?" 3 guesses. First 2 don't count. Screamer, bless his chaotic little heart, was particularly honest. "He does everything. Mom and dad watch TV mostly. My older brother helped me with everything." The house inspection was even worse. "How long has your oldest child been primarily responsible for childcare duties?" she asked during the formal interview. "He's not primarily responsible. He just helps out. According to the other children, he was the one handling night feedings, bedtime routines, and daily care for the infant." "Would you consider that helping out?" My parents fumbled for explanations, but they couldn't come up with good justifications. The final nail in the coffin was when she asked to see where Hurricane slept. My parents had to admit the crib had been in my room. "So, where is the baby sleeping now?" "Oh, we moved the crib to the living room temporarily while we figure out a more permanent solution." "Temporarily, right?" Mrs. Madison wrapped up her initial visit with a promise to return for follow-up inspections and individual interviews with each family member. The look on my parents' faces suggested they knew they were getting screwed. The CPS investigation wrapped up after 3 weeks of unannounced visits, interviews, and documentation review. The official finding was everything I'd hoped for: inappropriate delegation of parental responsibilities to a minor child, resulting in educational impact and emotional stress. In non-bureaucratic terms, my parents were guilty of exactly what everyone with functioning brain cells already knew. The consequences were beautiful: mandatory parenting classes, not suggested, required. My parents, both in their 30s, had to sit in a classroom with other dysfunctional adults, learning what responsibilities you can actually give to children of different ages. Required child care education. They had to complete a course on age-appropriate household tasks and recognizing signs of stress in children. 6 months of supervised visits from a family caseworker. Madison would be making surprise visits to ensure they weren't pulling the same crap with my remaining siblings. The house had to maintain certain cleanliness standards. The kids had to be properly supervised, and my parents had to demonstrate actual parenting instead of chaos management. Professional child care requirement. This was my personal favorite. They were now required to use actual paid babysitters for date nights and errands. No more free labor from their kids. Written acknowledgement of my rights. They had to sign a document stating that I had the right to pursue education and activities without being burdened by excessive household responsibilities. The real consequences hit them where it hurt most: their wallets and their reputation. Word spread through their social circle about the CPS investigation fast. Suddenly, other parents were asking uncomfortable questions about their family dynamics. Some of their friends started viewing them differently when they learned why their oldest son had moved out. The financial impact was immediate and brutal. Professional child care for 5 kids during their weekly date night. That's easily $100 to $150 per night. Now they had to pay someone or drag all the kids along, which meant dealing with the chaos themselves. My dad had to pick up extra shifts just to cover the babysitting costs. My mom couldn't maintain her part-time schedule anymore because someone actually had to be home with the kids during non-school hours. During one particularly tense family gathering, Karen tried to defend them. CPS just doesn't understand how close families operate. They're interfering with family dynamics. Paul, fed up with her enabling, finally let her have it. Close families don't treat their teenagers like unpaid employees. Maybe if you'd spoken up instead of encouraging this mess, things wouldn't have gotten this far. I was supporting my sister, she defended. You were enabling child exploitation. The room went dead silent. Even my parents couldn't argue with that assessment. My mom's pregnancy became a source of stress instead of excitement. The custody threats evaporated when their lawyer, they eventually did get one, explained that any judge would laugh them out of court for trying to force an 18-year-old into unpaid childcare. The lawyer recommended they focus on repairing our relationship instead of trying to compel my return. As for me, I'm absolutely thriving. My grades bounced back immediately once I started getting full nights of sleep. I went from a 2.8 GPA to pulling 3.6 by the end of senior year. I got accepted to that engineering program I missed the previous summer. They had a spot open for a spring session. My college applications are looking solid. And I've even got a part-time job at Gramps' buddy's auto shop. Real work that pays actual money. Revolutionary concept. Gramps and Nana refuse any money from my parents for my expenses. We're investing in our grandson's future, Nana told my mom during one heated phone call. Something you should have been doing all along. The relationship with my parents is permanently damaged, but honestly, I'm good with that. Some of my siblings started asking questions about why I left, and why strangers keep visiting the house. Screamer asked Mom, "Why did he have to take care of Hurricane at night when that was parent stuff?" My mom's response, "It's okay. Families have to help each other." But Screamer, not satisfied with vague answers, shot back, "But why didn't you help him with his homework like he helped us?" Out of the mouths of babes. Paul has become an even bigger part of my life, taking on that big brother role I never knew I needed. The best part, my parents are finally learning what it actually takes to raise 6 kids. Paul's response was perfect. "Welcome to what actual parenting costs. Most people figure that out before having 6 kids. Thanks for watching. What do you think? Was he right to leave? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if the story resonated with you.